today's video is about the first lesson of Flamingo, the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet. Today's session focuses on learning the story, understanding the characters, theme, event, and developing critical thinking and analytical ability. In today's video, we'll have the first part of detailed explanation of this story. Alphonse Daudet. Lifespan stretched from 1840 to 1897. He was a renowned French novelist, a short story writer with more than 36 works of literature to his credit. The author today is remembered for his sentimental tales of provincial life in the south of France. Through his work, it appears that the author was always against the French Republic. Let us have a brief look at the lesson, the story, as an introduction. This story is set in the days of Franco-Prussian War that was fought between the year 1870 and 1871. This war was fought between France and Prussia. France was defeated by Prussia that was led by the great Prussian leader, the German leader Bismarck. Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. These countries, Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria, earlier were combinedly known as Prussia. In this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. The theme of the story: linguistic chauvinism. Chauvinism is a practice that shows aggression and force imposition of a particular language, culture. In other words, aggressive patriotism can be referred as chauvinism. Linguistic chauvinism means a practice in which a particular language is considered superior to other language. Importance of one's own mother tongue. Through this story, the author also highlights that how important is the mother tongue for a particular person, and hence the mother tongue, the language, must be protected and guarded by each individual and must use and speak that language. Freedom of language. The story highlights that every person is having the freedom to choose a language, to speak a language. Patriotism. Through the story, through the characters, events, and incidents, we'll see that patriotism or the feeling of nationalism is highlighted. Attitude of students and teachers. As the story is about last lesson taken by the teacher M. Hamel, and how do the students react, how do they respond to the efforts made by the teacher. In this way, we learn that how should be the attitude of students towards teachers and teachers towards students. These are the characters. Franz is the narrator of the story, and who is one of the students of M. Hamel, the French teacher who teaches French language in the schools of districts of Alsace and Lorraine of France. Other students of M. Hamel and villagers. The villagers of Alsace and Lorraine districts who never come to attend M. Hamel's class. Now this is the class taken by M. Hamel, the last lesson. Once again, before we start the story, let's have a brief idea about how does the story start, what is the scene present when the story starts. So this is the last lesson. The Prussian authorities have acquired complete political control over these two districts, Alsace and Lorraine of France. And according to one of the order imposed by the Prussian authority, now in all the schools of Alsace and Lorraine, the French language will be replaced by German language, and moreover the French teachers will be replaced by the German teachers. So this is the day, this is the last day for all the French teachers. So hence this is the last day for M. Hamel. M. Hamel is now attending to his class, and this is the last class for him. And we see that today in M. Hamel's class, not only small students, small boys and girls are present, but the other villagers, old people who hardly come to M. Hamel's class to learn how to write, how to speak the French language, they have also attended the class. So let's start the story. Franz, who is a little boy who almost every day gets late for the school, and this day also he is late for the school, and he is totally unaware about this order that has come from Berlin regarding the last French class. So he is late. So let's see how he is afraid that he is already late, and moreover he was afraid because his homework was not done. I started for school very late that morning. That morning means that morning of last lesson by M. Hamel, and was in great dread. He was extremely frightened of a scolding. Why was he frightened? Especially because M. Hamel, the teacher, had said that he would question us, the students, on participles. Participles are forms of verbs. So, and I did not know the first word about them. He was not at all prepared about the rules of participles. So he was very much terrified. One reason he was late, and other reason he was not prepared with the homework. So for a moment I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. Just for a moment an idea struck his mind that he should spend the day outdoors. And moreover, the atmosphere outside was extremely tempting. As he says, it was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, a small forest, and in the open field back of the sawmill. Sawmill is a place, a kind of factory where the wood is cut into pieces or planks or boards. So he saw that at the back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers, the smartly dressed Prussian soldiers, were drilling, doing their maneuver, marching past. So all these scenes almost fascinated him. It was all so much more tempting than the rule for the participles. He relatively, he found all these things much interesting than those dull, almost boring rules of participles. So it was his opinion, but I had the strength to resist. At the same time, we see that the narrator had enough strength to resist the temptation. What were the temptations? The birds chirping and the Prussian soldiers drilling. So he finally made up his mind and decided to hurry off to school. When he was on the way to his school, he passed the town hall, an important government building. So there was a crowd in front of the town hall's bulletin board, news board, and he saw the crowd, and he was not very much surprised at the sight, because for the last 2 years all our bad news had come from there. All our bad news here refers to the beginning of the war between France and Prussia, the lost battle, and all those bad news. For example, the lost battles, the draft, the order of the commanding officer. And that's why he thought that without stopping there, without giving a look at the bulletin board that what's the news, let me see. He didn't bother to read out the news, or he didn't bother to inquire about what was the news. So he just thought, what can be the matter now? There couldn't be anything new. Maybe one another such bad news, he thought. Then he hurried by as fast as he could go. He made haste to M. Hamel's class, and on the way he could not move further when he was stopped by a blacksmith named Walter, who was there with his apprentice or a person under training, a trainee, reading the bulletin. So Walter was also present there in front of the town hall reading the news, and when he saw Franz hurrying to school, he called after him and said that there was no need to go so fast. Bub, informally we refer for chap, boy. As why did he ask him not to hurry? As according to him, he had plenty of time to reach school. Now here we should analyze what could be the reason why did Walter say so to Franz, because he had read the news. Of course, the news was about the last French lesson. The order from Berlin, the capital of Germany or Prussia that time, that from that day, after that day onward, in place of French language, German language will be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So that was the reason. But how did Franz react to this suggestion, this advice of Walter? He thought he was making fun of me, because every day almost Franz gets late for school. So he thought he was just pulling his leg. But so instead of giving any attention, to his suggestion, he reached finally M. Hamel's class all out of breath, extremely in an exhausted manner, almost panting. So when he reached there, he saw a lot of change in the usual sight. According to Franz, usually before this day, usually when the school began, there was a great bustle, a lot of activity, full of noise, bustle, which could be heard, and that could be heard out in the street. Such a noisy class it would be in the beginning of his session, M. Hamel's session. For example, the sound would include the opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, together, very loud, with most of the students' hands over their ears, as there would be a lot of sound, while they would keep their ears on the hands on their ears to understand better. And on the other hand, the teacher making the student quiet by rapping on the table with his ruler, his cane, his stick. But today, there was a change in the usual sight. What did Franz notice? What change did Franz notice as soon as he reached M. Hamel's class? But now it was all so still. Everything was so quiet. He had counted on. Earlier to this, on usual days, he had to count on, means depend upon. Very easily he would depend upon the commotion, the noise, the confusing noise, to get to his desk without being observed. So it was so easy for him to get to his place, although every day he would be late. So it would be easier for him to get to his desk, to his place. But this day, that day, everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. Sunday morning, no class. So definitely the classroom environment remains very quiet. So, and this day also, there was such kind of atmosphere, just like Sunday morning, everything was still, everyone was quiet. So it was extremely difficult for M. Hamel to get into the class. So through the window he saw that his classmates were already at their places, and the teacher M. Hamel was walking up and down. He was not sitting, rather he was walking up and down. He was just moving to and fro, suggesting that he was restless. He was very nervous, and of course, it was because it was his last lesson. This would be the last day when he would teach the people of Alsace and Lorraine, and after that day onward, he would not be able to teach them. So, this man who had been giving his services for the last 40 years was very nervous. So, he had his terrible iron ruler under his arm. He didn't hold it, rather, he had kept it under his arm, and then it was a crucial moment for Franz to make entry into the class. He had to open the door and go in, enter before everybody. Everybody saw him, and he says that how embarrassing situation it was. As he blushed, he felt so much ashamed, and he was frightened also at the same time. But nothing happened. What happened when he entered into the classroom? What was the reaction of M. Hamel? How did the other students react? But nothing happened. Means whatever he was fearing, M. Hamel didn't scold him, nobody laughed at him. On the other hand, M. Hamel saw him and said very kindly. He never speaks kindly to his students. He remains quite strict and serious in his attitude towards his students. So, on the other hand, this day he spoke quite kindly to him, and he said, asked him to go to his place quickly, and little Franz, little word brought a lot of affection. So he further said that he was about to begin the class without Franz. It's good that he had joined them. And then Franz, who was already surprised, he jumped over the bench. He took his place, sat down at his desk, and not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, and just after some time, when he had already somehow subdued his fear, he brought the situation under his control. He brought his fear under control. Then he saw what? He saw that his teacher was on his beautiful attire, the green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered. So the teacher was on the special attire, special dress that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So this unusual sight of M. Hamel also further astonished him. Moreover, what other changes did he observe? That this whole school seemed so strange and so solemn. The environment was extremely strange. Everybody was quiet. M. Hamel was not shouting at the students. Moreover, he didn't scold Franz for coming late. And there was a strange kind of sincerity, seriousness, or a calmness in the atmosphere. But the thing that surprised him most was to see that on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Just like all other young students, the village people, all old and young, came to attend M. Hamel's class. For example, old Hauser, name of a person, old person, and how prepared he came. He came there with his three-cornered hat, wearing the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. So he saw this strange presence of people who usually remain absent. Everybody, and on the other hand, there was a kind of a strange expression also on their face. They all looked quite dejected and disappointed, and Hauser had brought an old primer, an elementary book, and that was thumbed at the edges. You can see if a book gets thumbed at the edges, it gets worn out or torn and becomes dirty at the edges. And he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. He kept the primer book on his knees, and he was trying to understand the stuff written. So that's it. While I was wondering, he was just he got stunned almost about watching, observing all these things. Then what did he see? That M. Hamel mounted his chair. M. Hamel went up towards his chair, and in the same grave, sincere, and somber tone and gentle tone which he had used to me when the same kind tone when Franz came late, he addressed the class now. And this is the address that he made to his class in the beginning of the last lesson. My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. And the new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson, and I want you to be very attentive. So in this way, M. Hamel just declared about the last lesson. That was the result of the order from Berlin according to the decision taken by the Prussian authority, and at the same time he declared the purpose of that day's class, that he wished that all the students should be attentive. So here what do we observe about the character of M. Hamel? His utter sincerity and his commitment towards his duties, and at the same time his patriotic fervor is also highlighted. How did Franz react to this as soon as he heard these words of Hamel? What a thunderclap these words were to me. Thunderclap, startling thing, shocking thing. These words means whatever M. Hamel spoke, that this is your last lesson, and from today onward German language will be taught. Oh, the wretches! Oh, what a great destruction, loss! He just exclaimed with a lot of sense of loss, that what a great loss. That was what they had put up at the town hall. Then he realizes that what was there on the bulletin board. Why did Wachter ask him not to hurry? Now he realized they here refers to the Prussian authorities. My last French lesson. He is not ready to accept it, that was going to be his last French lesson. Why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn anymore. So he is full of regret. The sense of loss overpowers him. I must stop there then. What does Franz mean by this? When he, instead of attending M. Hamel's class regularly, instead of getting to M. Hamel's class every day late, he should have been more punctual and sincere towards learning the French language. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons. How sorry I was that instead of learning my lessons, I went for searching for birds' eggs, or going sliding on the Saar, the great meadows of France, or the Saar River, the meadows near the Saar River. Oh, my books, that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry. All of a sudden, my grammar, my history books, history of the saints, now they will all become my old friends. That I couldn't give up, and this idea he was not ready to give up. And M. Hamel, what feelings did he have for M. Hamel? And M. Hamel too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler, the ruler with which he used to punish his students, and how cranky he was. He just want now to forget that how weird and eccentric he was in his behavior. Poor man, he thinks, it was in honor of this last lesson. Now he realizes why he wore that his fine Sunday clothes. Now he realizes that it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes, and now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry. Two, that they had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for this his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. So what do we observe here? That the sense of loss and regret realized by the students, not only students like Franz, young students like Franz, but also the old ones of the villages. That is the reason that they had come to attend the last lesson, to show their respect and love for their country, for their language, and M. Hamel too. And while I was thinking of all this, I heard, and then he was he was just lost in all these thoughts. Then he heard his name being called by M. Hamel, as it was his turn now to recite, to repeat all the rules of participles. And he was very much terrified. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful, that horrible rule for the participle all through, all completely. He feared that what would happen if he will not be able to repeat all the rules correctly, completely, very loud and clear, and without a single mistake. But when he stood, he got mixed up. He got confused. He could not continue. He simply stood there holding on to his desk. His heart was beating and he could not dare to look up. So, up to here we'll have our explanation here. Let's have a few questions that are very important. What was the mood in the classroom when M. Hamel gave his last French lesson? So, when Franz reached M. Hamel's class, what did he observe about the mood of the students present in the classroom, and the old people like the Hauser and postmaster and the mayor, and also M. Hamel? What had the narrator counted on to enter the school unnoticed? Before the day of last lesson, on different other days, whenever the narrator, Franz, would be late, how would he easily enter the class? Depending upon what? This is your last French lesson. How did Franz, who made this statement? M. Hamel. So how did Franz react to this declaration of M. Hamel? What were the feelings? What did he think just after listening to this declaration announcement made by M. Hamel? What a thunderclap these words were to me. Again, these words refer to this is your last French lesson. The announcement that was made by M. Hamel about the last lesson at the beginning of his session. So, what a thunderclap these words were to me. Which were the words that shocked and surprised little Franz, and why? So, with this we come to the end of today's session, and if you like this video, please do subscribe my channel and press the bell icon if you want to get the